Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive financial truth that literally flips how we think about making money. We're going to look at why your very first major financial milestone is absolutely the hardest one to reach, but ultimately, why it's the most important step you will ever take. If you've ever felt like you're saving and saving but just getting absolutely nowhere, well, you're definitely not alone, and the math actually proves exactly why. Our journey today really kicks off with this incredibly powerful piece of advice. Focus on the first $100,000, because after that, your net worth will go crazy. This was actually life-changing advice from a millionaire mentor speaking to someone who was terrified they'd never have enough money to afford their dreams. Notice he didn't say to focus on making millions, right? He said to focus on that first $100,000. Now, it sounds like a lot, but hitting this specific number is the absolute key to unlocking true wealth. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, the hardest financial milestone. Second, the 100K tipping point. And third, the growth wealth strategy. Let's jump right in. Section 1. The hardest financial milestone, and why starting from zero is such a grind. Okay, if you're feeling incredibly frustrated when you first start saving and investing, your feelings are totally valid. There are two very specific, measurable reasons why getting to that first 100K feels like an impossible uphill battle. First up is your earning power. Think of this kind of like your level in a video game. When you just start out, you're at level 1. You just haven't been playing long enough to build up your skills, so you naturally can't compete with the level 50 players who have decades of experience on you. And for younger generations, this gap is actually widening. Studies show Gen Z has about 86% less buying power than boomers did at the exact same age. Crazy, right? It's mostly because older generations are staying in the workforce longer, which makes higher paid positions harder to come by. But there is a silver lining here. The internet and modern tech skills offer a tremendous advantage for younger folks to build online side hustles, effectively leveling the playing field against people who might not even know how to say, "Open Instagram." Now, the second reason the first 100,000K is so incredibly tough is the sheer lack of compound interest at the beginning. You've probably heard of the snowball effect, right? You roll a small snowball down a hill, and as it rolls, it picks up more snow, which represents your compound interest. The bigger the snowball, the more snow it collects. Makes sense. But here's the problem. Right now, at the very beginning, your snowball simply isn't big enough to pick up any significant snow. You essentially get zero benefit from compound interest in those early days. Consider this pretty harsh reality. $4,175. If you were to invest $10,000 every single year into an S&P 500 index fund, assuming an average historical return of about 7%, after 5 long years of intense discipline, your money will have grown by only $4,175 in interest. I mean, think about that. That's 5 whole years to earn barely over $4,000. That is exactly why the beginning is such a grind. It relies almost entirely on how much of your own money you can physically shovel into the pot, not on the interest you're supposedly making. But here is where the story totally shifts. Section 2, the $100,000 tipping point and when compound interest stops being lame. Just notice how the time frame literally shrinks here, assuming that exact same $10,000 annual investment at a 7% return, going from zero to your first 100K takes 7.84 years. But going from 100K to 200K, that only takes 5.1 years. You're building that second $100,000 35% faster, and it just keeps accelerating. 200K to 300K takes 3.78 years. By the time you're pushing from 400K to $500,000, it takes just 2.5 years. The math goes completely crazy, but, and this is the catch, it all happens only after you secure that first 100 grand. And just to really hammer home how powerful this tipping point is, consider this scenario. Let's say you hit exactly $100,000 in that index fund, and then you just stop. You never invest another dime. You literally completely forget the account even exists. Well, because you cross that specific threshold, compound interest takes over so aggressively that you would still automatically become a millionaire within 33 years. Once you hit this milestone, wealth becomes almost inevitable. So, how do we actually get there? Section 3, the growth wealth strategy, your actionable blueprint. Enter the growth method. This is a 6-step, highly actionable blueprint designed specifically to help you navigate those early days of wealth building and push you to that tipping point way faster. The letters stand for gain control, root investments, optimize taxes, weed out debts, tap extra income, and heighten discipline. Let's break down exactly how you can apply every single one of these steps. The G and R are your absolute foundation. G stands for gain control of your finances. And honestly, there is only one way to do that.
Budgeting. Budgeting isn't some restriction meant to stop you from having fun. It's a navigation guide to help you understand your needs versus your wants so you can make informed choices. Then, the R stands for root your investments early. The sooner you get your money into the market, the longer compound interest has to work its magic. In a 40-year window, the vast majority of your final wealth will be purely from interest, not the principal you actually put in.
Next up is the O in our strategy: optimize taxes. Now, looking at this neutrally, we need to understand how the tax system actually operates. There is a very distinct difference between tax avoidance, which is perfectly legal, and tax evasion, which is entirely illegal. Our source material points out that the system often heavily incentivizes entrepreneurship. See, entrepreneurs are taxed on their profits at the end of the year, meaning they can legally deduct justifiable business expenses, otherwise known as write-offs, from their earnings. For example, if you legitimately need camera gear for a video production business, that cost can often be deducted. Understanding these legal incentives can significantly optimize the money you actually keep to grow your snowball. Moving right along to the weed out debts, consider this absolutely staggering number: $221,800. That is the average debt carried by an American today. So if you're struggling with debt right now, you are definitely not alone. But to reach our tipping point, we have to address this head-on by listing out all our debts and prioritizing the ones with the highest interest rates first. And that's because high-interest debt essentially represents the dark side of compound interest. Remember our snowball rolling down the hill? Well, high-interest debt is like a blazing hot sun beating down on that snow. No matter how hard you work to roll that snowball and collect more snow, the debt is actively melting it away. This is exactly why you must make tiny snowflake payments wherever you possibly can to aggressively melt away your highest interest debt first. Now, it might feel like you're losing money making those payments, but it's actually a crucial investment toward hitting that first 100K.
Finally, we arrive at the T and H of the growth method. T is for tap into additional streams of income. Basically, start a side hustle. As of 2023, a massive 50% of Americans actually have one, even folks earning over 6 figures. A side hustle allows you to shovel more of your own snow into the snowball while you wait for that compound interest to finally kick in. And H, that is heightened self-discipline. Working extra hours and resisting the urge to spend your extra income on luxury items requires just an immense amount of focus and willpower.
Which brings us to this incredibly powerful thought to really anchor the entire growth method: discipline is the currency of success. The more you mint, the wealthier your future will become. Honestly, none of the math, the snowball effects, or the strategies matter even a little bit without the sheer inner discipline to execute them consistently over those first few grinding years. Well, we've covered a ton of ground today. You've seen the hard truth about why the beginning is so difficult. You've seen the exhilarating math of what happens when you finally cross that 100K tipping point, and you now have the growth method blueprint to get you there. The path is clear, but the action is entirely up to you. So look at your finances today and ask yourself, what is your very first step toward reaching that 100K tipping point? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to go take that first step today.